first one is phenomenal. I know that's a weird thing to say about a failure, but
Okay.
it is, in your words, failing in exciting the interest of my birth father enough for him to stick around beyond a few weeks. I mean, not one we've ever had before.
Good. I'm glad.
And I salute you for it. Tell me, first of all, why you phrased it in this particular way.
Well, the phrasing's quite, well, you would know this, obviously, as a brilliant writer and broadcaster. That's important. The phrasing is important. Because I was thinking, okay, what are my failures? And obviously, there's such a long list to choose from. And I thought, well, what's my earliest? I thought, oh, that's it. Oh, goodness me, that's true. Yes, because babies are designed for us not to throw them in the bin. You know, that's what they're designed. They're crying. They're the fact that they are entirely dependent on the people who brought them into the world to take care of them, or they'll die. You know, their huge, blinking, beautiful eyes, their smooth skin, everything is designed to make us want to be magnetically attached to this thing. Apparently not. So apparently not. And I think that, there's so much in that set of circumstances. Of course, I didn't realize for a long time, because I've always been very deeply cared for and deeply loved by my mother, and then cared for very well by my stepdad. It took me a long time to realize the imprint of that thing that had happened, and the imprint of that, essentially, I mean, it's very uncomfortable to use the word rejection, but of course that's what it is, that sense in which, I said, I sort of described it as sort of looking in the cot and like, nah. That's sort of what it feels like, really. And it took me a long time to work out that feeling was woven into other behaviours for me. So it took me a long time to, my story to myself for a long time. And obviously families have their own stories, and one absorbs the culture of that is, I got under the wire because I was too young to, so it's fine, I don't even really think about it, which of course is a complete nonsense. And then partly through having my own family, but also through just thinking about these things more, being more mature, understanding everything has an implication, is, the idea that somebody else's choices, and of course they are choices, are not made necessarily with the intent of giving you a direct hit that's injurious to you. You are simply collateral damage in that person's self-obsessed, decision or journey. But the impact of it is not lessened by the fact that you are just collateral damage in somebody else's messy choices.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot in it, and it's also a little bit funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit funny, but it is a failure because I didn't do the baby job.
There's the transgressive humour.
Yes.
And also, I imagine when you became a mother, I know that you're also a stepmother.
Yeah.
But when you became a biological mother.
Yes.
How did that make you feel?
Well, I thought about it at the time. That was the first time that I'd ever, because my mother was always really spectacular. And I mean that word absolutely, at making us feel wanted and valued and precious. But that's only half the story. That she could only do as much as she could do. We carry with us other messages that, however much that person might try to blank out the other messages, they are still there. And I had never really thought about it properly. I was in sort of forward propulsion motion. When you're young, you're just busy doing. And then I had my first daughter when I was in my very early 30s, and I was in the bath, and I think Freya was probably about 3 weeks old. And it was genuinely the first time I had ever shed a tear about the situation and thought, okay, right, so your biological father went when you were a few weeks old. But I didn't, it made me cry a little bit because I thought, I know how vulnerable I feel. And I was crying for my mother. I was thinking about what she went through, and it really struck me what she went through. It would probably be another 15 years before I started to think about the impact that had had upon me. But at that point, I was thinking about the vulnerability of the mother, because it is it's the rawest of situations. You are there, you are very dependent on the structure around you that's supporting you.
I want to come back to the impact on you, but I wonder if you mind my asking what happened? Why did he leave? I mean, I know you were only a few weeks old, but from what you can piece together since then, he was in the police, wasn't he?
Yes, I mean, I am very careful about talking about other people's stories, because, of course, it's my story, and I have my, I was going to say version of it. That sounds far too manicured, but I have my experience of it. But other people's lives are affected, not least, of course, my mother, who is my primary concern. So I'm aware, in talking about this publicly, I mean, I don't mean to sound grand, but, talking about this in a way that I'm in front of a microphone and I'm being recorded, there are sensitivities to the people who are very much still living their lives and have their version of it. So, it's not my wish to be guarded, but I'll kind of be careful. But what can I say about it? I can say that my mother was in an extremely difficult marriage where she was treated very, very poorly and ended up on her own with 2 children, because she couldn't put up with my biological father's behaviour, and he didn't appear to want to be engaged in his 2 tiny children's lives. I'm going to leave it at that.
Understood. Have you ever seen him since or spoken to him?
Once. Yes, once when I was 16. It was a brief meeting and a brief conversation.
Your mother remarried
She did.
John Young.
She did.
Your father.
Yes.
And would I describe your childhood as happy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I definitely would describe it as happy. I have a brother who was born out of that second marriage of my mother's. We were brought up very much as a unit of 3 children. I took on my stepdad's, but I call him my dad's name, and we were brought up as a united family, and I felt very loved. I was cared for. I'm close to both of my siblings, and yeah, I would say it was generally happy. I mean, there were all the things there are in every family. There were the strains and the tensions and people trying to get through their lives and make sure we were fed and clothed and food on the table and all that stuff. But yeah, I would say relatively, I certainly felt the security of love. There was a lot of love. Yeah.
So out of the 3 of you, you're the one of your siblings who has this public profile.
Yes.
And has this forward-facing, outward-facing career in many ways. So when you were talking about the imprint that this story left on you,
yes,
can you see where I'm going? Can you see the cod psychology a mile off?
You just serve it up and I'll take it. I've done enough of that in my time.
Is there a line to be drawn between what happened to you and your biological father leaving and wanting to make him aware and the world aware that you were important enough to take notice of?
I can only think that there absolutely must be. And at the same time, I am deeply uncomfortable with that as a notion, because it is so obvious and so binary. But I think that, there are many very interesting jobs in broadcasting. You can be a brilliant producer, you can be a director, you can write, you can do all the amazing things that people do. And I chose something that was in front of the camera or on mic. And why did I choose that? Well, it's uncomfortable, isn't it? I there's partly because that's where my capabilities lay, but also I think because I like people to like me. Do you like me? Do you like me now? Am I nice? Is this good enough? It doesn't feel like that. That's not the thing at the front of one's head. But it surely is. It surely is in the mix. It must be. Why do you care? Why do you care? Why do you care if strangers like you? Why do you want I don't any longer want my face on a magazine cover or to be interviewed, or but that's because I've done it all. There was a point in my life where I did like that. I liked that. Why on earth would you like it? Why would you need it? Only because there's a bit of, you need the approval. You need approval. And I mean, I hate to think of it as a kind of jazz hands, do you see me? Can't help thinking that there's something in that, as much as I'm uncomfortable with the notion.
Yes.
I don't want to be that person.
Yes.
But turns out there's a little bit of that. I wouldn't say it's simply that, because I think I did have the ability to turn a good script, and I have a voice that translates well, and all of those things that were part of my character. But there's definitely a bit of, do you see me? Do you like me? Do you like me now? There must be. It's impossible.
Do you still have that need for people to like you?
No.
Oh, when does it stop? Tell me.
I mean, I want the people I like to like me, but I don't
Yes.
care if anyone else likes me.
And when did that come to you?
Well, I never really felt. I mean, here's the thing, isn't it? I think that there are all sorts of things going on that we kid ourselves, the stories we tell ourselves. I didn't tell myself the story that I wanted strangers to like me, because that would have been that would have been an uncomfortable story. But once I accepted that that was part of who I am, and that I did like that, and I liked recognition, and I think once I mean, when does it stop? That's a really good question. I don't want anybody to think any work that I do is crap. I mean, I do it with a professional pride, and I hope it's very nice if somebody comes up to me and says, I listened to this and I really liked it, or I enjoyed it when you did this, or I watched this and thanks for doing it. That is very, very nice. But I don't in any sense depend upon it. I'm not waiting for it to happen. I'm not disappointed if it doesn't. I'm not sure. I think that's probably been too gradual a thing for me to kind of put so you feel that, do you? You feel like you need
I do. I feel it lessening in my mid to late 40s. So I have felt it, but I am now logically aware that when someone has a response to something that I put out into the world, the largest portion is about them and their personal story, and not so much about what I'm doing.
Well, yes, so I think exactly so. I mean, you've put it much better than I was just trying to,
have.
which is, well, you have, because I think that what happens is with maturity, and that's the same thing I was talking about, the perception of being rejected, or the fact that I was rejected as a child. I was a bit player in somebody else's story. So if somebody says to you, I mean, as sort of searing and unfortunate as that is, and injurious as it potentially is, it's the same thing if somebody says, oh, she was shit doing the Queen's funeral. Well, that's okay. That's all right. It's just your opinion is fine. I did the job as well as I could. I did it to the limit of my capabilities. I gave it my all. And you're totally entitled to your opinion, and that's fine, and you can't please everybody. And I think it probably comes with a degree of relaxedness as we get older. And, I was watching I think it was Jodie Foster, brilliantly talking about, she was talking about she's now in her 60s, but she was talking about being in her 50s. And she was saying, in your 50s, you're still relating to the younger you. You're still trying to get back to that person who was the 35-year-old you. She said, in your 60s, the game, that game's up. That's what you've disconnected from that 35-year-old. You're not looking back anymore, and you're in a different space. And I thought it was wise and interesting. And I think the idea of getting freer as you get older is the great benefit of age.
Yeah.
You give less of a fuck.
Yes.
That's very freeing. Very, very freeing. And also, I see myself as, I'm just a little person going about my business along with all the other little people. And I mean little in the great sense that we're just all in the hive. We're just doing our thing, and it's sort of neither here nor there, really. You become you stop starring in your own show quite as much as you get older. And I think that's very freeing.
Have you forgiven your biological father?
I think dysfunction, poor behavior, not stepping up in any of its forms comes from whatever that person is dealing with. And I don't know him, and I don't know his story because I don't have a relationship with him. So I would say that it's not something I harbour or feel that there's a score to be settled. It's just what happened. That's kind of how I feel about it. I don't carry I carry a sadness for what my mother practically had to go through. I carry endless admiration for how she coped with it. And as far as somebody I don't know is concerned, he doesn't occupy a space in my head. She occupies a space in my head. But I also understand the impact of it on me. But I would say he, the person, doesn't occupy that space where it's an emotional attachment. Does that make
It makes total
sense?
sense.
Yes.
It's almost as if to be the one forgiving implies that there's still emotion that is resonant and active in your life, and actually,
yes, exactly. My emotion is about the people who took care of me.
Yes. Thank you for watching. Make sure to check out the full episode of How to Fail on your preferred podcast platform, and also be sure to follow us on social media for the latest updates.